Dear distinguished peers of the International Education Institution for the Active Thought. Screw that. I don't need to try to fit every word I've ever studied for standardized testing in here. Let's just get straight to the point, shall we? Vulnerable, powerless, impotent, defenseless, ineffective, feeble. That's the thesaurotitis version of the feeling that despite everything that it means to you, despite your relevance, despite your passion, despite the gnawing feeling of how much you care, you aren't allowed to make the decisions that surround you. You aren't allowed to stop the ground from pulling up towards you really fast. You aren't allowed to break the spinning top. You aren't allowed to jump out of the moving vehicle. You aren't allowed to regulate the poison that you knew you shouldn't have swallowed. Somehow, it seems as though you aren't allowed to do much, even though you know just what should have been done. Vulnerable, powerless, impotent, defenseless, ineffective, feeble. These are feelings that Justice Committee was sent here to fight, like a guardian angel, a noble protector, a superhero sent to keep the tears of frustration out of your eyes and the desire to punch someone or something out of your heart. And maybe it hasn't always been successful, but it's the closest thing we have. You see, it's not so long ago now that the mere idea that students could have any say in anything was shut down. It's not so long ago since our cries for regularity and reason in our rules was ignored. It's not so long ago that hugs lasting longer than 10 seconds were banned. We've made strides since then. We've argued and debated, glared and smiled, shaken our heads and pumped our fists. Much like any young superhero, Justice Committee is, in the right hands, a force for good. In the wrong ones, less so. Vulnerable, powerless, impotent, defenseless, ineffective, feeble. This email isn't about me, though. In fact, if anything, it's more about you than anything else. TGS is more than just a bunch of individual bodies. It's an entity with a heart and a brain and a couple of limbs strewn about. But lately we seem to be acting more like the Siamese twins from Dragon Tales than anything else. One pulling one way, the other pulling another. We are pulling in every which direction, and it's not going to end well. Justice Committee is our way of fighting this. If elected, I would want to make sure that when faced with an unfair threat, you guys are well armed. I want to continue River and Jake's fight to give you the power to speak up for yourselves, to argue for what is right when necessary. But most importantly, I don't want our superhero to crumble. We are fighting for justice and speech, not about just ice cream and sprinkles. Let us make sure that what we are discussing is relevant and worth talking about. And when it is, let us make sure that we are putting our words to good use. Because it's not enough to feel vulnerable, powerless, impotent, defenseless, ineffective, and feeble when you could be on the back of frickin' Superman. Let us make sure those scales are righted. Danielle for Justice Committee. Thanks.